Ever catch yourself doing something and you're like, why am I doing this again? Like, why am I always biting my lip? Well, today's deep dive is all about just that lip biting.
Oh, it's so common, And most people think it's just a quirky little habit, but it can actually be a sign of something more going on.
Right. And this article you shared really dives into the why.
Yeah, and it neatly breaks those whys down into two categories: the physical reasons and the psychological ones.
And get this, the article mentions something called BFRBs, body-focused repetitive behaviors. It's like a light bulb moment because suddenly I'm seeing my lip biting alongside things like nail biting, skin picking.
All those little things we do without really thinking about them, right? Yeah.
Exactly. BFRBs, who knew? But it makes sense because it's not just lip biting in isolation, right?
Hmm.
So let's get into it. Starting with the physical stuff. I was surprised to learn how much our teeth and jaw play a role.
Oh, for sure. Think about it this way. If your teeth aren't aligned properly, like if you have an overbite or underbite, your lips are kind of always in the way. That constant pressure can make you more likely to bite down on them. They even compare it to a zipper that doesn't quite close right.
The zipper analogy, I think, good one. Makes total sense.
Right. And it's not just about your teeth themselves. TMJ disorders, those affect the joint in your jaw, and that can make you more prone to lip biting too.
Oh, TMJ. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so when that joint isn't working properly, it can create tension in your jaw muscles. And one way some people unconsciously try to relieve that tension is by biting or chewing on their lips.
Wow, so it's like our body sending us a signal, but we're misinterpreting it completely.
Exactly. My jaw hurts. Must.bite.lip. And, something as simple as dry lips can contribute to the problem, too.
Right, because then you bite to try to make the dryness go away, which
Yeah.
of course only makes it worse.
Totally. It's a vicious cycle, but then there are those times when your teeth are fine, your lips aren't chapped, and you're still nibbling away.
Okay, yeah, that's me. That's totally me. And that's where the psychological stuff comes in, right?
You got it. And this is where it gets really interesting. The article talks about the connection between lip biting and stress.
Okay, so like when I'm up against a deadline and I find myself chewing on my lip.
Exactly. It's your body's way of trying to manage that stress, like a stress ball, almost.
Self-soothing behavior is what the article calls it.
Yeah, it's all about the nervous system. When we're stressed, our sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and that triggers the fight or flight response.
Oh, right, fight or flight, like caveman brain stuff.
Exactly. And for some people, those ancient responses manifest as physical habits, like lip biting.
So I'm biting my lip because my inner caveman is freaking out.
In a way, yes. It sounds kind of funny, but it's true. It's like danger. Must bite lip to relieve tension and regain control.
Wow. Okay, so this seemingly small habit could actually be a sign of something bigger going on in our brains. This is getting deep.
It is, and what's fascinating is that our brains are hardwired to seek relief from discomfort. So if we bite our lips when we're stressed and it even temporarily helps, our brain takes note.
Like, hey, that seemed to work. Let's file that under stress management.
Exactly. And that's why something that starts as an unconscious reaction can become a full-blown habit over time.
So it's not just me being weird. There's actually a reason I keep biting my lip, even though I know I shouldn't. But okay, before we spiral, the article does offer some hope, right?
Yeah.
We can break this cycle.
Oh, absolutely. We're definitely going to get to that.
So how do we break this cycle? Spill the secrets. What does the article say?
Well, it's not really a secret, but they break down the solutions into kind of two categories: DIY solutions and then getting professional help. And the best part is they emphasize that there isn't just one right answer.
Oh, okay. So it's not like one weird trick to stop biting your lip forever.
Nope, not at all. It's really about figuring out what works for you based on, those root causes we were talking about earlier.
Makes sense. Yeah. So what about these DIY solutions? What can we start doing today to combat those lip biting urges?
Well, a lot of it comes back to managing stress, finding healthier coping mechanisms. So the article talks about things like mindfulness meditation. Have you ever tried that?
I have actually, yeah. It's tough, but it does help.
Right, or even just deep breathing exercises. Or, and this one might surprise you, regular physical activity can make a big difference. Gets those endorphins going.
It's hard to be anxious when you're crushing a workout, right?
Exactly. And honestly, something as simple as keeping your lips hydrated can be a game changer.
Really, just using chapstick.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Dry, chapped lips are like an open invitation for biting. So keeping a good lip balm handy can actually be really helpful. Preventative,
It's like building a little fence around your lips. No biting allowed.
Exactly. But let's say you've tried the DIY stuff and you're still struggling. That's when it might be time to look into professional help.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. What does that look like?
Well, for some people, therapy can be really effective, specifically something called cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT.
CBT, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so with CBT, you work with the therapist to identify the thought patterns and triggers that lead to lip biting, and then you learn healthier ways to, cope with the stress and anxiety.
So like rewiring those neural pathways.
Exactly. And then in some cases, medication might be recommended, to help manage the underlying anxiety or maybe obsessive compulsive tendencies, which can contribute to these repetitive behaviors.
Huh. So it really could be related to OCD. I wouldn't have thought of that.
It can be. And of course, if the root cause is something physical, like the malocclusion or TMJ we talked about earlier, then going to a dentist or orthodontist is probably the best course of action.
This is blowing my mind. We really dive deep on this show, huh?
Yeah.
I never would have thought that something as, I don't know, seemingly insignificant as lip biting could be connected to so many different things going on in our bodies and our
I
minds.
know, it's pretty wild. But that's why I think this article is so great. It reminds us to look beyond the surface and to really consider the bigger picture when it comes to our health and well-being.
100%. So I have to ask, the big takeaway here is that no matter what's at the root of this, lip biting is treatable, right?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's really important to remember. It's not something you just have to live with, you know?
Yeah.
There are solutions out there, and there's help available if you need it. By understanding why you're doing it and exploring the range of options, you can actually break free from this habit.
Wow. That's a really empowering message.
It is, and it really speaks to the importance of awareness, which the article touched on before.
Okay.
Just by even being aware of the habit, understanding the potential causes, and knowing that there are solutions, you're already taking a huge step in the right direction.
100%. Awareness is key. Okay, so we've talked about why we bite our lips and what we can do about it. Anything else our listeners should keep in mind as they continue their lip biting journeys?
It's like those little habits, the things we do that we think are just us being quirky, they can actually tell us a lot about what's going on.
Okay, yeah, like what?
Well, they can be our body's way of trying to tell us something, like, hey, I need something here. Could be stress relief, could be physical comfort.
It's like our body's sending us a signal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my challenge to everyone listening is this: next time you catch yourself biting your lip or doing any habit you want to change, don't just ignore it. Stop and think about it for a second.
I like that. Instead of being like, ugh, why am I doing this again? It's, hmm, interesting. I wonder what's up with that.
Yes. Ask yourself, when does this usually happen? How was I feeling right before? What's going on around me? You might be surprised by what you figure out.
It's like detective work for your own brain.
Right. And as you start paying closer attention, you might find those little habits aren't so random after all.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the reasons behind lip biting. We've explored some solutions. But as we wrap up, what's the one thing you really want to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think the key takeaway here is this. Those little things that we think are just me quirks can actually be super insightful. They can be our body's way of communicating with us. It's up to us to pay attention to the message.
That's a great point. So often we just brush these things off, but they can actually tell us a lot about ourselves.
Absolutely. And this whole conversation, it makes you think about all the other little habits, the things we do without even realizing it.
It's true. This deep dive really makes you stop and think. Like, what else am I doing that I could be more mindful of?
Exactly. It's all connected to this idea of listening to our bodies, being more aware of our behaviors, and realizing that we have the power to make changes.
Love that. And sometimes those changes start with paying attention to something as small as biting your lip. Who knew, right?
Right. You never know where that journey of self-discovery might lead you.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And remember, those seemingly small habits might hold big clues to a happier, healthier you.